friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams yet again for another Vlogmas video. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of November. I started out really strong, and then obviously because of my brother's passing, the end of the month was much fewer books. So I didn't quite get everything read that was on my TBR, but I'm very okay with that. I was participating in nonfiction November, and I have a couple nonfiction, and then I was doing my own personal NetGalley November, and I have 4 books to review on NetGalley. I still haven't reviewed them, but I read 4 books that are on my NetGalley. So that should increase my rating a little bit on NetGalley. The first 2 I'm not going to talk about because they are part of my Read Like a BookTube Friend project, and I read 2 books like Gloria from Gloria Z. Thompson. So I'm not going to share those ones with you here. Those will be in a separate video. I still have another one to finish of hers, but I'll work on it. I'll work on it. So let's just get into the ones that I did, that I can talk about, that I will talk about. I'm going to start with my Patreon book club book of the month. Honestly, I just finished this yesterday, which was December 3rd. I probably should wait and count it in my December reads, but because it's a nonfiction and because I read a good chunk of it during November, I'm just going to talk about this one here while it's fresh on my mind, I suppose. This is a very highly recommended nonfiction kind of self-help book talking about habits, obviously. I think that James Clear had a ton of really good practical things to think about in regards to starting new habits as well as getting rid of old habits. He had 4 kind of laws when it comes to adding habits, like make it clear, make it obvious, make it appealing. I forget the 4th one, but I did really feel like there was a lot of practical advice. I think some of his illustrations were a little bit long. We talked about that in my book club chat about it with my patrons. There were a couple parts that I just skimmed through because I wasn't really in the mood for this. When I actually read most of it, I just was kind of completing it for that book club, but I do feel like it's a book I would return to and that I could get more out of, or different things out of it at different points of my life. I feel like it's one that I will keep on my shelves and probably reread, but at this point in time, I'm giving this one 3.5 stars. The other Patreon book that I have is my pick from some of my patrons get to recommend a book every month, and I picked a Susan Meissner book. She actually requested that I read a different one, but I've already read it, and so I just picked the newest Susan Meissner that I had to read, which was Only the Beautiful. This was historical fiction set in California, but also we follow a woman who lived in Austria during World War II. The first half of the book, however, focuses on Celine, who lives in California. Her mom had died off the page just before the start of this story. And Celine is approached by the owner of the vineyard where her family worked, is kind of taken in as their ward, but really she becomes like a maid, lives there for quite a while as their maid / chef, and seems to be going okay, but then things happen and she becomes pregnant without being married, and the mom, the mother of this family, is very anti-scandal. She doesn't want anything to do with it. So she sends Celine away to what Celine thinks is a home for unwed mothers, and it ends up being an asylum. It turns out Celine has synesthesia and can see shapes and colors when she hears any kind of a sound. Her parents begged her to keep this quiet, and she didn't really tell very many people about it, but somehow the owner of this vineyard got wind of it, and therefore she was sent to an asylum to not only have her baby, but try to get this anomaly of synesthesia out of her, whatever. So we follow her through her time at the asylum. In the second half of the book, we follow Helen. And Helen is related to the family who owns this vineyard. And because of the things she sees during the war, when she comes home and finds out what happened to Celine, she is devastated, and it causes her to want to take action. So I won't talk too much about it because it is the second half of the book. I thought this was very well written. It was a little bit of a tearjerker at times. I was very invested in Celine's story. It did feel like an abrupt switch when we started talking about Helen. But I did like where it was going. I just really preferred Celine's part of the story to Helen's, but it did make sense. And I really like Susan Meisner's storytelling, and I gave this one 4 stars. I'll continue with the 3 other NetGalley books that I read. I had started The Secrets of Heartwood Hall by Kate Lumsden at the end of October, I believe. So this was one of the first ones I read in November. And unfortunately, this was a bit of a miss for me. I felt like there was a really good setup of the setting and the atmosphere. I felt like that was done really well, but it took a long time for the story to get going. And I'm not sure that it ever really did get going. And I just ultimately was feeling let down by this book because the setup was so good at the very beginning that the rest of it just didn't live up to that setup. As a quick kind of synopsis, it takes place all at Heartwood Hall, and it's Victorian in the 1850s, I believe. And we follow all of these characters who live at Heartwood Hall. And there's just some secrets. There's some unknown things going on. There is a single mom there with her young son. And then we follow from the eyes of the governess who is brought on, hired to take care of the boy and teach him. And he lives a very sheltered life. He's very protective. And the governess just starts to help branch him out. Like they get permission to go to church and go for walks outside. But the mom is very concerned and cautious about him. And so the governess is just curious why. Some people seem to know more things than others. The governess develops a friendship with a gardener, a slight romance there as well. And I also didn't love that romance. I didn't think it was necessary. I mean, I guess a little romance in books is fine, but it was a little more of a romance than what I needed or wanted. It was a little bit more sexual, I guess, than what I was looking for in this kind of a book. So I thought it had a lot of potential, but ultimately I just ended up giving it 2.5 or 3 stars. Not really a fan. 3 stars usually is pretty good. I guess I'll give that a 2.5 because I really didn't care for it. But then I did really like The Secret Book of Floral by Patty Callahan Henry. Honestly, I read this so early in November that I don't remember too much about it. I know that we follow 2 sisters who are sent out to the countryside during World War II. They live in London. The older sister, there's quite an age gap between them. One is like 14 or 15 and the other is maybe 5 or 6. And the older one creates this whole fairy tale world for her little sister to help with some of the trauma and to help distract her sister from all that is going on. And so she creates this whole world. Then the little sister disappears one day while they're living out in the countryside. And the older sister always has felt very guilty about that. And they never really find out what happens to the little sister. But then the older sister becomes a bookseller. She's working in a bookstore and she is the purchaser, the buyer. I think she's the one that searches for books, but one day this book comes across her path that is the title of the book is this land that she created that she thought only her and her sister knew about. So then we get into this whole mystery of who else knows about this world and how do they know about it? Did her sister talk to somebody? What happened to the little sister? So it's this big mystery that takes place. And I really enjoyed this. I have enjoyed a couple other Patty Callahan Henry books, and this is no exception. Again, there is a bit more of a romance in here and was it language? There was something in here that surprised me because I didn't find it in either of her other books. I think it was a sexual relationship that the older sister had when she's an adult, grown woman, but not married. And it just took me by surprise because I don't remember that being a part of her other books. But then the other 2 books that I read were both focused on C.S. Lewis and his wife. So maybe it's because of their personalities and who they were as real people that the sexual side of things wasn't a part of the story, but it was in here and it just took me by surprise. I don't think it wasn't really very open door or anything. There were I remember it being a little more graphic than I was expecting. So that did take me by surprise, but I did still really enjoy the mystery of this and the 2 sisters and where the story went. So I think I gave this one 3.5 or 4 stars. Honestly, don't remember. Then the fourth NetGalley book that I read is going to be possibly my favorite middle grade of the year. And it was The Lost Year by Catherine Marsh. This was a fantastic, fantastic story. We follow a little boy who, as a middle grade age boy, who as a punishment one day has to help his great grandmother go through some of her boxes. It takes place during COVID, during the shutdown, and the grandmother was brought to live with this family rather than being in a home. So she is now staying with them. And so the boy, through his punishment and of having to go through her boxes, starts to learn the story of his great grandmother and what she has experienced. And she is from the Ukraine and lived through this great famine that happened in the Ukraine in the 1930s. So just before World War II happened. And so I loved everything about this. I loved the relationship that develops between that boy and his great grandmother, Gigi. He calls her great grandmother Gigi. And I love that relationship that develops. I love that she starts to open up and tell him her story. I love learning about this famine in the Ukraine and what that was like. I had never read anything about that before, didn't really even know about it, and how horrible Stalin was. I knew Stalin was horrible, but to see another side of that was just eye-opening to me. I loved even that it takes place during COVID. I mean, we're at the point now where we're going to start seeing that probably in more and more books, but I thought this one was done really well. Especially talking about the differences. Everyone had to draw their own boundaries for themselves and their families. And because this boy and his mom had their great grandmother living with them, she was pretty strict about even riding his bike around the neighborhood and things like that. And so he was feeling the frustration of that. And I thought even that COVID side of things was done really well. This was an easy 5-star for me. And I absolutely, absolutely loved it. I can't wait to see what else Catherine Marsh either has already written or is going to write. I don't know because I haven't read her before, but yeah, this was fantastic. The Lost Year. So, so good. And then I have one more nonfiction that I read, and it was a graphic novel, Book Love by Debbie Tung. It's actually not a novel. It's more just comics about the love of books and being a reader and a book collector. There was so much in here to relate to. There were comics that made me laugh, comics that made me say, yep, that's me. Comics I had to share on Instagram because I could relate to it so much. I absolutely loved this little book, and I'm giving this one 5 stars. I do think it would be a fantastic gift for someone that you know that is a book lover, a book reader, or to add to a gift. It was a lovely little graphic comic book. I'm still continuing on in my read of Spy Family. I read book 4 at the beginning of the month. This is quite overdue at the library. I think I was able to renew it, but I forgot that I still had it. And yeah, there's a couple of these books that need to go back to the library. Whoops. But yeah, Spy Family is one of them. In this one, we continue to follow the family of Twilight, who is a spy. For an assignment, he has to marry someone, and he marries somebody who is a secret assassin. And they have to adopt a little girl, and she is a telepath, so she knows this big secret that both of her parents have. And in this one, they get a dog, and the dog also has some special abilities, which was really fun. So I'm enjoying my read through of this manga series. I don't know that I've read one other manga book, but I've never read a series, and there are tons of them. So I'll continue little by little reading through Spy Family. And the final book that I read this month was my 12 books to read in 2023 pick. And that was The Room on Rue Amelie by Kristen Harmel. This one takes place in Paris in World War II. And we follow Ruby, who marries a Parisian. She's American. She marries a Parisian man in the midst of the war. He leaves her, or their relationship is really struggling. I forget what exactly happened, but she decides to stay in Paris. She has committed herself to him and to become a Parisian. And so she decides not to go back home to America. And before the war had started, or before Nazis had invaded France, she had gotten pretty close with a neighboring family who are Jews. And especially the 11-year-old daughter of that family. They had had some really sweet moments kind of out on their balconies talking to each other and helping each other out in certain ways. And I thought that that was really, really precious. And then when the Nazis do invade and things start to look a little bit more precarious for that family, our main character, Ruby, decides to help out and hide the daughter of that family. So we kind of follow them from there and where that takes us. I did really enjoy this book. I do think it doesn't stand out in my mind as far as World War II historical fiction goes. It was an enjoyable read while I read it, but I don't think it's going to be particularly memorable. I probably will not keep it on my shelves. I don't think I would ever come back to it, but I am glad that I read it, and it was a good story while it was happening. So what is that, 3.5 stars maybe? I don't know. I'm so bad at ratings. I did also read Plot Twist while I drove home right after Jordan passed, and honestly, I cannot remember that book. And that is no fault of the book. It was just something to help keep me a little bit distracted during my drive up to my mom's. I do remember telling my mom that it was stupid. It was probably a fine rom-com, but in the moment, I'm going to mark it as read, but I'll probably leave it with no rating because I don't think that that would be fair because of my mental state at the time, but I did read it. So I will include it in my Goodreads, but I'll leave it unrated. Oh yeah, and the 2 books that I've read, like Gloria. So decent month overall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And Atomic Habits is really December, so 10. Yeah, odd reading month overall, but here are the books. Once again, I would love to chat with you in the comments. If you've read any of these, what did you think of them? Did you feel similarly to me or different from me? I always love hearing your thoughts on the books that I'm reading. If you are now interested in any of them, I would love to hear that as well. And that's going to be it for me today. Oh no, I'm adding on to the end of this the last 2 days of Advent calendar unboxings. So enjoy that. And that's going to be it for me today. I will chat with you in another video very soon. Bye. All right, I am back with some more Advent unboxings. Today is December 5th. So this was for the 4th. This is for the 5th. This is for the 4th. This one's for the 5th. So I have one of everything to open right now. So I'm going to start with this little one. This should be a bookish item. Oh, it's a little pencil bag. I love pencil bags, like little bags like this. Keep reading. Cute. And it has a bookish print on it. Oh, that's adorable. I love that. Fun. And it's embroidered on here in cursive. Love it. The book for this month, and I love how she packaged all these for this month. For today is, a Danielle Steele. That's funny. Let's see what it is. This one is the first one I don't think that I'll actually read. The High Notes. Looks like we have a country singer. I'm not sure. Probably not going to read that one. So that's the first bummer out of the 3 that I've opened. Day 4 would have been this. Second day of the FabFitFun box. Let's see what this is. Grace and Stella. It's like an energy drink for your eyes. Eye mask. Oh, nice. I love that. Very cool. And then day 4, which is today's. Oh no, I'm sorry. Day 3. Yeah, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. So day 3 jam is Mirabelle Plum Spice Spread. Ooh, that sounds delicious. Yay! So we've got the Mirabelle Plum and an eye mask and a book pouch, a little pouch, and a bummer of a book. I don't know. Let me know if any of you have read Danielle Steele. Maybe I'll give it a try. We'll see.